to another edition of our very humble podcast. And tonight I could not be happier to introduce Mathew Hayman. Welcome, Mathew.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. It's been a couple of weeks to get this together, but I'm happy to be here.
Thanks so much for joining us, Matt. You know, it's a huge honour to have a guy of your calibre on this show. You know, where I'm a bit overwhelmed, I've got to be honest, so I mightn't say much throughout the night. But mate, thank you.
I doubt it.
I do have a lot to say usually, but really look forward to hearing your story, your personal story, and I know a lot of people are very keen to hear where it goes. So thanks again, mate. Cheers.
No problems. Happy to share.
Look, mate, there's so much to talk about, and we will get to your fantastic Paris-Roubaix victory. But really, for me, I just want to share with our viewers, what was it like back for you back in the day in Canberra when you first started out? What was it that got you on your bike? Do you remember your first moment on a pushy?
Oh, it was actually probably before Canberra, actually. So we lived on a farm out past Tarago towards Goulburn. And my mum, actually, we were always just bashing around the paddocks on bikes. I've got an older brother, Michael, 6 years older than me. And so he was always riding his bike around, and Mum thought she'd take him into town. And she'd seen guys riding out past, we were about 45 kilometres from Goulburn, and she'd seen guys riding out on bikes on the dirt roads out there because it turned to dirt. And she thought that, you know, a bike club was a bit like, you know, a bit like the Scouts or something. They go for a ride, stop at a pond or at a dam, have a sandwich, jump in the pool, jump in the water, and then go, just pretty relaxed. And actually, like looking back now, we went in with with the ute, with Michael's mountain bike on the back. He was in stubbies and a pair of sneakers. Awesome. And Goulburn Cycling Club, and but there were guys there that were racing at state and national level already, so we got there and they were, tyres pumped up to 8 bar and cleaning out their cleats and on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. But, really, warm welcome to our family to come there with a guy on a mountain bike, and he had a pot helmet on, and there was a handicap. Standard Australian, road racing on a Saturday, and off my big brother went, and I think he got a nice handicap. I think he came home first.
Wow.
And afterwards, the card tables were set up, and all the baking had been done during the week, and all the food came out, and rural country, country cycling club. But yet, guys were pulling, $1,000 bikes, or I'm not sure, maybe back then, but proper racing bikes out, and they had a track racing, and my brother was hooked. Within a year, Mum and Dad were ordering bikes from Italy, and he had a track bike, and we were going around. Around New South Wales, going to road races and track racing. So that's kind of where it all started.
It's part of your character, though, isn't it? That the first question I ask you is about you, and automatically you start talking about other people. And I really must tell you that, I've known you for about 20 years now. I haven't spoken to you in so long, but it's just such a great thing to catch up with you because you're such an incredibly humble guy. So, look, what about you? What about your first moment? And I know your brother's an excellent cyclist in his own right. Yeah. What about your first race? Do you remember that?
My first race, I remember that well. So my first bike came when we were still out on the farm, and it was a black and white Spokesman, Spokesman was a bike shop in Canberra at the time. And under the Christmas tree, I got this little racing bike. And I did some training out there, and we moved to Canberra. And actually, my first race was a non-start. So we went out to Uriara Homestead, and so my brother was into it by this point. He was already on racing bikes, and I pulled my little Spokesman out, and I saw this other kid riding up and down really fast, warming up, doing some sprints, tiny little gears. And I went, no, I'm not racing today. So I put the bike back in the car, stood around. Anyway, finally next week, we go back out to Point Hut Crossing.
Yep.
Back there was no houses out there at the time, and we could use a loop. I think it was out to Thara and back. There was nothing out there. And it was a little out and back, 4K or something. And this little kid turned up again, this time I got up enough courage to race him. Well, we had a good chat, rode out for 2K, turned around, came back, we were chatting away, and then just like within sight of the cars, all of a sudden this guy just sat on my wheel and he stopped talking to me, and I was a bit like, what the hell's going on here? And then over the top, and he won. And that was Mick Rogers.
There you go.
The two of us, my first ever bike race, and the two of us, eventually we were roommates again on Sky 20-something years later.
And did you ever race with him ever again?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I'll talk about that race. So he had come from a racing family and been, involved with it from Griffith, and so he knew how to race, and he lined me right up real good. But we were a quick learner, and we raced. We spent a lot of time racing together. We were friends for a lot of time, and there were periods there where there was a pretty strong rivalry as well. We both wanted the same kind of positions on national teams or state teams. And that's, evolved through the stages, and then, to come back was really nice to be a teammate with him again on Sky.
Matt, what do you think it is about Canberra? We've had probably 3 or 4 people now who've come from Canberra with Rory and Warren as well. And look, the culture there, and Simon's obviously lived there previously as well. What do you put it down to? It just seems to have been a real hotbed for breeding some great cyclists.
Yeah, I think looking at it now, the infrastructure, but then also the community. So it's a bit of the both. So I'm this is just a bit of a guess. I mean, so you've got the great community of the club, welcoming. It's still small, still easily accessed. You've got a velodrome there. You've got, ability to do circuit, criterium circuit racing. And then you've got the infrastructure as well, where you've got the bike paths, the extra bike lanes. It's a bit more, it's been a little bit more thought out, a bit more organised, and I think it's conducive just to participation, and then also some good racing. I mean, we still get our fair share of road rage down there, but you go out to Timbimbilla and places like that, and you can be on a road that doesn't really go anywhere. It's not really a through road to get to another town or another city. It just kind of meanders around through the hills, and you come back into Canberra. So most of the time, people out there have got nowhere. They're out there just to go and see a nature reserve or something, and you're not really in anyone's way. So there's a lot of nice riding there too.
And I think for me, it was also the community. The fact that you turn up to a Saturday you'd go to, say, a Friday bunch, you'd be there, Mick Rogers would be there, Pete, 40, 50, 60 people each time.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm sure there's other clubs in Australia that have really strong community. And that's what got us into Goulburn Cycling Club. As much as it was, my brother enjoyed riding his bike, it was the way we were welcomed into that club. I still look back, and there definitely isn't that level in Europe. I mean, it's a different kind of sport over here. There's groups of people go training. But that whole coffee shop culture and the training in Australia, what I really missed being over here was that you could go home and you sit down at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock after a ride, and you've got lawyers, and you've got students, and you've got a guy who mows lawn. You've got every walk of life, and they're all brought together. And maybe one guy has an expensive bike, but he still gets dropped by some 18-year-old kid, and it's a real leveler. People just talking. They might go off to work that day and never really associate with that group of people, but you bring a lot of different people together, and that's really where you wouldn't normally meet up or be with each other.
Mate, how do you take you're a very nice person. I reckon there'd be not a person in the world that would say that against you. How do you take the nice personality you have and the warm, nice guy to the aggression and the physicality, and what is it about you that you can sort of switch into that? Okay, now we're going to have our moment. Now I'm going to get aggressive. Yeah,
ask some of my teammates about that. They warn other guys. I definitely have a bit of a switch. I've learned to control. I'm fiercely competitive, and I can say that more comfortably now that I'm older than I probably would have been able to admit earlier on in my life. I just really want to win. I'm not. I wouldn't say, there's other guys, I've watched documentaries, heaps of documentaries about sports people, and I'm not a win at all cost guy, but very competitive, Okay. And if it's not winning, it's going about it the right way and pretty particular about doing things.
So how does that go with kids, mate? I mean, kids are probably the most.
3 kids. Yeah, they're all different. It's hard to let them win.
There's no rhyme or reason with them.
No. Oh, look, it's been great being at home this last period since the season's finished, because you can really get into routine and connect a bit more. When I'm coming and going, it's sometimes harder to fit in that. I see that competitiveness to come back in my kids, and it's as much as you don't want to push them into anything, I also want to encourage them to be competitive and to take up sport, and they're all different. So some of them need encouragement in one area and other ones. I mean, I've got my little 4-year-old Noah, and we ride to school even -2 here with lights on this morning at 8 o'clock, and he takes in everybody's driveway, goes across all the gravel, rides with one hand, and he's all over it. He races cars. Anybody who comes past, he's racing them down the street. So he's one to watch out for.
That's awesome. Can we just go back a step? Look, we probably had a pretty successful amateur career, I'm assuming, but I wanted to sort of jump forward to your first pro contract and who that was with, and how that came about.
Yeah, so pretty much the step from I was in ACTAS, and James Victor was coaching me, and I was with Mick Rogers, we were moving into national teams. Went to Junior Worlds, missed out on the track. Went to Junior Worlds on the road, got a silver medal in the road time trial in 1996, and that kind of Novo Mesto in Slovenia.
Cool.
And in the lead up to that, we raced a couple of races in Italy, and I got a couple of wins there. And off the back of that, there was the opportunity to go into the AIS, into the road program, which was Heiko at the time, or follow my brother, who was already in Europe. He was racing in the Netherlands, and I opted to go with that. He put the feelers out. After that silver medal, I got in touch with the Rabobank amateur team. So it was the first year they had an amateur team. Got pretty lucky there, and they were pretty much had filled the spots. So Nico Verhoeven was the director there. He invited me to fly over. I did some tests over here, and then had 3 years on that team. The first 2 years raced for the other guys a lot, and then I had some people that I was racing and training with really got in my ear and said, you've got to stop helping other people win, because they're all getting pro contracts and you're still amateur. And the third year as an amateur, I won 6 or 7 races. I won the Dutch National Championships, which was a bit strange. So I
sent a few people.
Well, I turned up to a race in Canberra one day with the Dutch National Champions jersey, and Matt comes up and goes, "What are you doing wearing that?" Because he was actually that year the Dutch National Champion.
Under 23 National Road Race Champion. I've never won an Aussie road race title, but I've got an under 23 Dutch one. And pretty much straight after that, I got an invite from Mapai to come and test for them, because at the time they were developing that. They had that 2-tier system with the young team and the pro team. They had almost 40 guys there for a while, so they were throwing a pretty big net. And I told the team about that, and they pretty much called me in the office and signed me the next day. So I didn't even get down to test with.
Can you remember when you first got that contract, Matt? You first got the kit, you first got the bike. That's every cyclist's dream. How did that feel?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I remember actually being down on the south coast. I think it was Michael Payne's place or something.
Payne,
yeah, I think he had a place down on the south coast, and we had a big New Year's Eve and woke up New Year's Day, and it was like, I'm pro now. And that was it. Day one, 1st of January, I've done it.
That's awesome.
I realise now I was nowhere near. It was the start of, I was back on the bottom of the pile. But I mean, I was already pretty well prepared for the level of, the amateur team was very well run. It was the mind-boggling how well we were looked after as amateurs. Looking back, but yeah,
you used to get regular requests. I remember this is so long ago. You used to get regular faxes or emails, and you had to itemise targets you had to meet, and you had to ride to that intensity and submit your data. I think that was correct, wasn't it?
Yeah, we used to get all the training programs and everything. It was pretty high tech. I had a bit of a double feeling going. There's a lot of stuff that was kind of high tech and new, and yet coming from ACTAS and the Australian way of looking at sport, which was more scientific based. As far as, I don't know, kind of the testing we would do at ACTAS and the level of training was a bit more scientific, and whether that came from the East German influence there, but it had definitely trickled down through all of the state academies and everything. And that's why our junior riders were winning all the world titles. Yet, at that point in time, most European kids were just racing on the weekend, and like kids in Australia play cricket or something. They weren't. But if you were a bike rider in Australia as a junior, I think I was doing 800k as a junior before Junior Worlds, and still going to school, and all kinds of intervals and efforts and whatnot to prepare for a Junior World title. And most of the Europeans I raced against, they might have done a couple of lead-up races with the national team and rocked up. So,
wow.
Yeah, but then cycling is pretty traditional, but Rabobank was definitely the budget and the funds and the level of support was unbelievable.
Did you ever do any of those Dutchy crits? I mean, we've heard a lot about them. Craig Chapman, for example, spoke about them and the speed at which they attack those. Have you done those?
Yeah, I tried to steer clear of. They're too hard. I preferred to race in Belgium, where they had a bit more of a kermis race, which just a crit was real short circuit around the church, pretty much either cobbles or clinkers and pretty tight. Yeah. And then to Belgium was a more flowing, probably 8 to 10k around. You went out of town a bit, so they were a bit nicer to ride. They're pretty intense, the Dutch ones. So yeah, I did them as an amateur, and actually the pro-am kermesses in Belgium when I had turned professional were pretty set up. There was a bit of a mafia kind of period of you'd turn up and there'd be 10 guys from one team and I'd be there by myself. And then I didn't know who was mates with who, and there was always deals going on, and it was almost impossible to. I'd prefer to turn up to a World Cup where I knew that Bettini was going to be good, than have to work out who was in with who and how to race this crit. So I'd only ever do the Belgian kermesses as a pro, just for training.
When you went through each level and each kind of race, and from a kermesse to a World Tour or a World Cup level race or a pro, or did you see this distinct step in every single part of your journey through to the pro ranks?
A distinct step. I guess I came in looking back as a under 23. I came in thinking I won those races. I thought I was pretty shit hot. And then I had a big shock when I turned pro, and you realise that every single one of those pros in that bunch has won a bunch of races to get there. So they're all freaking talented. They all know how to win. And yeah, I guess I kind of adjusted my goals from wanting to win stages at Tour de France to hey, I'm going to be the best domestique I can, make sure I keep my job. And it was a bit of a, if I want to stay in this sport, I've got to make sure that I find a niche that I'm good at. Because I'd seen a couple of guys too put their hands up or come in with a bit of a swagger, and you've got to be pretty. You can get away with it a few times, but if you don't come up with the goods, and especially if there is someone else going better, then it's a pretty slippery slope, and you end up on the outer pretty quick. So.
Can you explain to people, Matt, who may not understand the role of the domestique? I mean, it's the ultimate sacrifice that you make, and I think it's probably, apart from Roubaix, which we'll still talk about a bit later, perhaps the greatest achievement of your career would be that you are, or were, one of the best domestiques there was going around for such a long period of time. Can you describe the enjoyment that you receive by just sacrificing yourself for another individual or for the team?
Yeah. I mean, it does all come back to that competitiveness. And I mean, I'm there to win. And if I'm going into a bike race and Oscar Freire is on my team, well, who am I not to put in 100%? We want to win. I want to win. And it's best, and that's the way forward. I mean, or it's, to please people. But, that's kind of the way I saw it. And still as a director, I try to make sure that we've got a goal, that we're pulling in one direction. So yeah, it was a pretty easy decision when you're racing with the likes of Eric Decker and Oscar Freire and Michael Burgert. You've got to wait a while before you put your hand up and say, hey, how about you guys ride for me today? So these are the kind of guys guys winning 3-4 stages of Tour de France. It was a bit different. You go to a smaller race and there's a group of young guys, and that's when the egos kind of come out. But once you go to those big races, and that's where I wanted to be. I wanted to be at the biggest races. So, and if I got Oscar Freire's trust, and he knew I was going to do the job that I was asked to do to this point to the best of my ability, and he could rely on me, and he'd ask for me back next time. And Eric Decker the same. So I just really, enjoyed that, and I enjoyed winning. And those guys were winning, and I worked really hard to make sure that they kept doing it.
What was it like leaving that Rabobank team and heading over to Sky? Was it?
Oh, yeah.
Would have been.
I think. It was. I was excited about the opportunity, and after 10 years of being pro with them, and then another 3 as an amateur, I was getting a little bit stale. As in, there was no real expectation for anything more from me. The team was always happy with me. I was happy with the team. I got paid. Everything was fine. There was nothing. There was no problems. But it really was just an opportunity to kind of reinvent myself, see what was out there, and start again. And it was really good that I did. It was really exciting to be a part of that team when it started. Just the way that and going back to saying the stuff that happened at ACTAS, Canberra ACT Academy of Sport, that kind of science came back into it with Sky. And again, big budget. It was nice to be on teams like that where money's no issue, and just to see them, kind of really just we came up against enough problems. There's tried to reinvent the wheel on a couple of things, and then you find out there's a reason why there's the tradition of cycling, and that's why they've done it like that for so many years. But it was exciting to question everything, to really just look at the sport from the outside and have people just question, why are you doing it like that? Well, because we've always done it. But no, let's go through it, and if it ends up that that's the best way to do it, we'll do it like that. But let's not just take it for granted.
Matt, how did you stay so grounded? I really, I take my hat off. Pretty much all of our guests are so humble, and that's hard for us to understand. If you're mixing with the likes of Oscar Freire, Michael Bogart, Paolo Bettini, Lance Armstrong, you name it, Bradley Wiggins, Chris Froome, the list goes on. Your career covers such a wide number of eras, I suppose.
Yeah.
How did you remain grounded? Did you ever pinch yourself and say, well, wow, I'm just this kid from Toronto, I'm from Canberra?
You get grounded pretty quick every time you go up a mountain in the Tour de France. I think there's not too many. I think the sport's too hard, and you pretty quickly the hammer and the nail. I mean, I think there is a lot of respect amongst the riders for each other. I mean, I think that that somebody like Rigoberto Urán can look at Mark Cavendish and just go, I just don't know how that guy does that. I don't know how he suffer through the mountains. And then vice versa, you look at somebody else. And so everybody, you've got to respect for each other, because today might not be your day and you might get your ass kicked, but tomorrow, tables are turned. So there's, you can't be too quick to judge people, and there's no he's a good rider and he's a shit rider. Everybody seems to have their day and their forte. So, I think maybe the sport's just too hard to get a big head. You just get too tired.
And if I can ask one more, when did the love for the classics really come through, mate? Was that right from the start, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I came to Belgium and Holland to race it, and of course, being around that environment with Dutch guys, and they were, when you're under 23s, they're all glued to the TV to watch Tour of Flanders and Roubaix, and then also my physical capabilities. I'm 80-something kilos, good kind of, middle peak powers, minute powers, things like that are really good. Can't climb, like the crosswinds, pretty good bike handler, not a bad sprint. So that just, once you get good at something, and what's not to love? I mean, we even have a couple of guys in the team that we had to kind of convince them the classics weren't for them, because they wanted to be up here just to the environment and just, it's something pretty special, the way the Belgians get going for these races. And then, so it kind of started there, and then once you kind of get good at them, but yeah, there's a lot of hard days in those few good days. You go back and I can pull out 5 or 6 results in the classics, but then that's 10 or 15 classics for 20 years straight, and there's 5 or 6 results. So there's a lot of rough days in there.
Wow.
Mate, I think it's about right about now that we jump into your Paris-Roubaix victory.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, the victory itself is phenomenal, but for me, and when I think about it, or I had thought about it when you won, I thought, how does anyone maintain motivation after 10 years to go back and hope?
Yeah. Look,
after having a broken arm.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess it's going back to the question before about how do you fall in love with the classics, and for sure Roubaix, it wasn't love at first sight. I definitely got my ass kicked the first couple of times there, and it was people around me saying, you're going to be good at this race, and it's a race for you. So now I try to make sure I tell all the boys it's a race for them, even if I don't believe it myself. And I was like, I don't know, I don't reckon. This is, pretty brutal and pretty fast. And then I did get a good result a couple of years in 2003, 2004. Just, it wasn't, I think I was there or thereabouts within a couple of minutes of the front, and had a bit of bad luck, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, that's a little flame. And then it did really grow, and through that Sky period was when I felt like I was at my best, and there was a year there where I think we had 4 or 5 guys chasing Tom, and he rode away and won it. But there was Boassenhagen, Stannard, myself, Fletcher, and we were all on Sky, and no one really took the lead. I felt like I was going really well, but I wasn't the traditional leader. And that was kind of helped me make the decision. I wanted to ride the Tour de France, and I didn't want to be in that team anymore with 5 kind of guys at the same level. And that's when I moved to GreenEDGE. So that was a pretty, to get more opportunities in the classics, and Sky had given me the confidence to put myself back in that position to actually say, I don't want to just be a domestique all the time, and then to go to GreenEDGE and say there's room here to lead a team every now and again and still be the domestique in the other races during the year. So it took a while to fall in love with the race, but by that time but then I kind of had the opposite. I got so, I put so much pressure on myself just for Roubaix, as I felt like that was the race. I could take the pressure off for most other races, but I really, every year I'd get there and think, oh, it has to happen today. It has to all go right today. And, this is it. It really needs to happen. And I often, I think I overthought it for many years there.
Mm.
And then, of course, 16, it was my 15th Roubaix and the pressure was taken away. So,
So did you do the last wet one in 2001?
I did 1 and 2, yep.
Yeah.
I missed 2. I missed Stewie's and maybe Backstead's, I think. Maybe there's 2 I didn't ride in 20 years. So I did 17 in total. Got to velodrome every single one.
Wow, that's amazing. Before we, I really want to delve into a few key moments in 2016. But before we get there, can you just describe for us that feeling everyone talks about in that race, the commentators, the riders, getting to Arenberg and wanting to be in that lead pack? They talk about doing 70 Ks an hour, heading for those cobbles. Can you take us there? And wow, that's got to be hectic. I can see the look on your face. That's awesome.
Yeah. I hope none of the riders are watching because it was a reason I said it was time to retire. So 2018, I guess, where Com Games were on the Gold Coast. I was lining up for Roubaix. It's a chance it's going to be wet, and that was I can picture it right now. That group, I know the road, I know where the cobblestones are. There's some few little bit of cobblestones in the middle of the road, and then you can see the forest at the end of it. I know exactly where you need to move, and it was kind of like, I don't know. I know if I get there, I'll do it, but I'm not enjoying this. I'm not enjoying having that play over my mind. And if I can't sprint into Arenberg, then I'm losing my edge as a bike rider. And it was kind of like, I think it's time. So many years you went, okay, it's dangerous and it's not nice, but I'm willing to take that risk. And it was, back then, and I think I'd already kind of decided, but it was sitting there just going, I really don't want to do that again. And look, I just had to, without going off our chronological time order, I was the director this year when it was wet, and you got to line up and convince 7 guys that the best thing for them is to sprint into Arenberg. So I had to be very careful and think, really choose my words wisely and make sure it was the guys' choice, how they wanted to race, but try and lay it out there and give them confidence and take away some of that fear. And some of them was a fear of unknown. They hadn't raced in the wet. So it was a real struggle for me to not bring my own fears into guys that were excited to be there and were still in their 20s and don't have a wife and 3 kids at home, that wanted to race the Roubaix in the rain, and also be realistic too about the dangers, but not convey that fear to them. So and look, racing Roubaix in the rain, as we saw, there's people everywhere. It ended up being a pretty safe race. Look, there's a couple of guys crashed and here and there, and we saw in both the men's and the women's race that when it is so full on like that, you're not racing with 80 guys into Arenberg, never. And when guys crash, it's 1 or 2 guys. You're not having the Mitch Docker crash where 40 guys go down and people, yeah. So
look,
no, but
I know you probably don't want to, mate, but we go to 2016. There's a moment there where you've made the front group. I think you got dropped off the back of it, and then you come back. Was there a point in time where you thought, wow, I'm here?
Yeah,
hot chance for this. Yeah.
So probably up until that point, it was going well, and to make that 5 already, it was a bit of crosswind before one of the sectors, and we were going into. There's only a real short section of asphalt between the one before Carrefour de l'Arbre, and then on the second corner of Carrefour, I got Ian came underneath me, and I got knocked off the wheel, and I thought it was. I thought, oh, that's what I deserve. That's it. I got my hopes up again about this race. But she always dishes me up some bad luck somewhere. what was I thinking? Because I was thinking, fifth. If I get fifth in Roubaix, I'll be pretty stoked with that. I think my best before that was eighth. So I was just like, if I just hang on to these boys. And then, from just what I'd been through, I guess with the home trainer and I'd been in the break all day, so little did I know I was actually pretty fresh because I hadn't had to fight into all those sectors. But just not having that pressure, and I was just like, first there was like a real kind of down, and then it was like, well, I've got nothing to lose, and the first thoughts were, well, how many guys are behind me? Is that next group going to catch me? And then when they go past me, I could be 20th or anything. And I said, well, let's go, let's see. And it was just really just like left, right, let's just push pedals and see where we go. I've got nothing to lose here. And then when I got back to them, that was a big change. I got on the back and I was like, wait a minute, I just rode back to these guys while they were chasing Sepp. And then it was like I had a secret that they didn't know about. So from that point, I just grew. So had I not had that little thing, maybe I wouldn't have backed myself as much as I did in the last couple of K.
So did you have your director in your ear at the time going,
Yeah, I did. It's really, now that I am a director, it's really hard to know where people are exactly on the course and exactly what's going on. You wouldn't believe how little information you have in the car. So I did. And, I actually flicked the earpiece out in the end and didn't have it in the last K. So Matt Wilson was in the car and Matt and Lorenzo. And I've never done that before. I've never flicked the earpiece out. And I've always thought it's a real sign of disrespect to see a rider riding around with his earpiece out, just because you're a part of a team and you need to be in communication. And if you've decided you're not communicating with anybody, but I did. I flicked it out just in the end, and funny enough, I mean, really, the last couple of K doesn't really feel like it was me doing it anyway. I feel pretty much like I was on autopilot, and I was doing what I thought I should be doing, or what you see the good guys do.
So is that why you attacked Bonin the first time on the way?
It was I worked with Steve Peters, with the sports psychologist at Sky, and he talks a lot about in his book. I think it's the chimp something or other. That's the terminology used. But getting in that autopilot thing, and I mean, he can train you to do that, and I got there pretty luckily, it from whatever training, everything came together, and I was in that autopilot kind of, I wasn't second guessing every decision. I was free. I was just doing, and it did feel like a point hut crossing sprint where you just line someone up and you have a go, and then they catch you, and you're just mucking around. I did not feel the pressure of Roubaix down there.
It just happened to be against one of the best sprinters of all time in Tom Boonen, and Sepp Van Mark as well, mate. Can you remember? Were you in autopilot when you came into the velodrome, or were you starting to strategize about what you were going to do? Did you want to be on the front?
I felt I had, I've run over that sprint in my head before that point. It was never that scenario. When you lie there daydreaming about winning Roubaix, you come in solo. But no, I felt like out of that group, I was still going for a podium in many ways, and I felt if I led out, it'd be hard for three guys to come around me. So that was kind of, look, if I hit out early, how many guys are going to get over me? And to be honest too, about 4 days later, I started Googling the length of the track. And even though I'd been there 17 times or 15 times before, I got the track length a bit wrong. So I came off that banking down the back straight, and it wasn't until I went into the first turn, turn 4, towards the finish. And I saw 200 metres to go, and I'm like, well, at Bunda, 200 metre to go is in the first bend. I've gone a bit early here. So, coming off the banking was like 300 something meters to go. So it's actually a 400 meter track.
Wow.
So it was longer than I thought. So, but yeah, look.
Has it changed your life?
Not really. Yeah, it has, but you're still the same. Yeah, look. Yes, but I did work out if, once you come home and the kids still don't respect you, and it's just a rock on the mantelpiece for them. Everybody's still the same. Still got to get up and mow the lawn, and it has and it hasn't. I'm not trying to, I worked bloody hard in my career, and there is not a race that I would have liked to have won more. And what everything that race stands for, which is resilience and persistence, the things that I really value. And there's not a race that I and it's nice people say you're a legend and this and that, but ultimately you're still just the same person you were before you won.
What did Vernon say to you after the finish, mate?
Said, you stole it. No, your turn, you bludger. No, he was really good. He look, I really respect the way he was able to conduct himself after that. I guess as many races as he's won at that level, he's probably lost a few at that level as well. I mean, to be able to, in that situation where a country or everybody expects you to win and you lose, and particularly to somebody who's relatively unknown, he didn't feel a need to explain himself to anybody. He didn't do anything other than, he didn't deflect any blame. He said, I won. And, that was pretty, to be able to do that in that situation when obviously he was ruining the day, and he would have won 5 and would have been, all-time record holder.
Yeah.
And he was able to say, look, I've got a few of those rocks at home, and that's going to change this guy's life. I'm happy for him.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Pretty big. It shows his levels, too. And to have the whole country just, on the edge of their seat, I was worried the house would be burnt down by the time I got home, but living in Belgium.
Death threats, yeah.
Apparently, there was only one guy in Belgium that was happy he didn't win, and that was the former record holder. So,
right.
Or someone.
So, mate, taking all that experience and all that opportunity and all that understanding and knowledge, and then jumping into the car. What's that feeling like? It must be so bizarre for you to go from the bike to the vehicle.
Yeah, it's becoming pretty normal now after 3 years, but it was definitely different. What was it like? It was hard to retire. It was easy to keep going, and it was an identity that I'd had for such a long time. But I also there's not 1 minute that I regret it or feel that I missed out on anything. I was very much ready, but still, unsure doing it. It's been, I felt like I had experience, and I felt like I had friends and teammates and people that I could help to try reduce the time or the energy that they needed to get their best results. But there was a lot of stuff I didn't know, and it really was totally different. I mean, I'd been in the peloton for 20 years, and the first time I had to drive a car and see what the directors see and the mechanics, and there was a whole different world that you feel like you know cycling if you've been a pro for that long, and I had no idea what it was like. To be in the car all day, it's an experience, and there's a lot of the same kind of emotions and a lot of the same kind of adrenaline that you get. So you're getting that fix as well. Being around the team, still the same. So there's a lot of that stuff's carried on, and you got your troop and you travel around and you fight it out.
You still get to ride now, Matt?
Not too much. I try to stay fit and not, let myself go too much. So I ride a bit, not as much, just because of how time consuming it is. I'd like to do more. So when we're at races, we run normally in the morning. There's a few guys, some of the staff, and we normally get out early and just do a quick run in the morning. Just, it's good for my back too, sitting in the car for 6-7 hours a day. And then, and when I'm at home, I like to head down to the pool, and then, I jump on Zwift every now and again, or I go for a mountain bike ride or something. But, I don't upload every file or.
Mate,
it took me. It took me
people on Zwift.
Yeah, that's a good thing. It took me a little while to, be able to do some exercise without recording it, or without, being able to just stop whenever I wanted to, or go off feel, or, just do it for pure pleasure. I remember, like, even within a month of stopping, getting on the treadmill, and I wanted to run 5K, and I'd got to 3 or something, and I was like, right, if you get to 3.2, then you can get to 3.5. And I thought, I've been doing this to myself for the last 25. No, if I want to stop now, I'm just going to stop right now. This convincing yourself and pushing yourself. And now I've, that whole pressure's come off, and now I just leave with, I want to do something. And when you're super motivated, you do more. And when you're not, you don't. But that competitiveness still comes back anyway. Still try and drag race guys down the swimming pool.
Mate, we're coming to the end, but Paul, is there anything you wanted to throw in?
Oh, wow. I could keep talking all night. Probably one for me to finish off is talking to Rory there a couple of weeks, Matt. He seems to be trying to bring a new culture to the Australian cycling team, and I'm interested in your view on what you think needs to happen to get us back to the levels that we've been at before.
Yeah, look, I think what we've been missing is and COVID hasn't helped that, is the basis, the grassroots, and bringing that, guys that have had to make it now, and the under 23s that I saw this year at the World Championships, they're having to do it back. And I had a really good run with Rabobank, but it's almost like we've gone back in time, that they're pioneers and that they're looked upon from the guys back in Australia as just shipping themselves over here, plonking down and hoping for, finding French teams or this. I think if we can bring some structure in, and I'm not saying that the national team is the only way to go, and we've had that period too where you're either in the national team or you're not. But I think we need to develop those pathways for young guys to come over and test the waters. And, I'm also for, it's a life-changing experience, whether you end up being professional or not. I mean, we've got enough guys that came over, they just, might ride 2 or 3 Belgian Kermesses and then head back to Australia and decide this is not for me and go and finish their uni or whatever. I'm not saying that everybody has, but we need to open those pathways up, and it doesn't have to be now that it's just, 1 or 2 guys that are real either super talents or pioneers or need to, just let's give people more opportunities. And I think that, ultimately, yes, that might be a national team that's over here or teams that come together. But I think we're looking at the under 23s, the under 19s, the development side of thing. And I think that's where, rightly or wrongly, it might have been funneled in and focused down, the track for the last couple of rounds, last couple of Olympics, and there's, I mean, look at some of the performances. Still, we still are performing at this level. Look at the Tour de France. And last year Richie Porte on the podium at Tour de France. This year, stage wins. I mean, there are, but it seems to be a little bit more sporadic, and those guys have really had to fight hard. And if we can encourage, and get a few more people over, I think that'd be good.
Awesome.
Been a tough couple of years if you're under 23. I tell you what, if you're under 23 in the last couple of years, I mean, through this whole last couple of periods, I think they're probably going to end up being the people affected most. That in all walks of life, that 15 to 25-year-old group, that's a real time in your life where, I was lucky enough if I was in lockdown, I was with my family and pretty settled. But those people are still trying to find themselves and missing out on a lot of experiences.
Yep.
Mate, there's one story quickly I'd love to touch on before we do close out for tonight. Is the Vuelta a España, where you're GreenEDGE and you're riding along and you've got your climber there. I do want to say his name, but I'm going to get it wrong.
Esteban Chavez.
Esteban, there we go. And I can remember his interview, and I almost cried hearing his story about you, and you telling him, "Hey, mate, go, you're fresh."
Yeah.
And that's probably one of my favourite, more so than Paris-Roubaix, because for me it really shows the generosity of spirit from you. And that day, just tell us a bit about what it was like, just to have that realisation that, hey, if I just go up and have a quiet word.
Yeah, look, he was in great form, and I look back on that Vuelta as really, one of a really, really positive experience out of my career, and it was a bit of a random race to have as one that I really look back on. 2015 Vuelta, we won a stage. We had the red jersey with Esteban for I think 8 or 9 days. He won 2 stages, and Caleb Ewan won his first Grand Tour stage. And it was really just the atmosphere, and we had a real mix of older riders and younger riders, and everybody was just pulling and in one direction, and we were all doing whatever needed to be done. And yeah, I could just see that he was handling the heat. It was a bloody hot day, and we were just going over these roads, and they were just up and down, and I was just struggling, and he was just like all chirpy and chippy and just riding along. Hey, boss, and I was just like, well, what do you think about the finish or this? And I said, mate, have a look around. Everybody is dead. And I said, mate, if you feel good, just go, because I think he might have even been in the jersey, and we were just kind of the plan was kind of defend. But I felt like, look, if you're up, you never know when you're going to get this form again. You're never really sure. Anything can happen tomorrow. So if you're up, just lay it on the line.
Wow. Amazing story.
Yeah. And I mean, I've talked a little bit about, people ask you about the races you remember. And I go back, and I've had great times with a lot of different teams over the years, but the ones that stick out are always the ones we won, which goes back to showing that competitiveness. And yeah, I might have had a great week with some guys somewhere, but it doesn't stick out unless we really pulled together and won some races. And that's what's really satisfying about doing the sport.
Wow. Where do we keep going? I mean, I could talk all night. 11 Grand Tours, so many top 10s in so many different classics, mate. I absolutely take my hat off to you, and so stoked that you gave us your time tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure to sit here and listen to your story. And thank you so much from us and from all the people who listen to us. So cheers.
All right, guys, it was a pleasure. And look, I enjoy racing. I love racing, love talking about it, and it doesn't get old. So
good stuff. We've actually got a private jet coming over to pick you up next Friday, Matt. So we're having a few drinks in Newcastle, and I know you know Newcastle. We're having drinks at the Bar Beach Bolo next Saturday. So the jet will be there to get you on Friday. And
I came down and rocked up to the race course there for a ride the other year.
I have heard a few people were quite shocked when they realised it was.
I think I was a bit early. I was a bit early for the bunch ride and a bit unannounced. A few people were doing double takes, and I heard some whispers. What the hell is? Wait a minute.
Is this the Broadmeadow race course?
Yeah.
Mate, I've spent a few hours going around there.
I did do the Boxing Day ride, the one up the hill. I'm gonna forget all the place names now, but no, but it was just a during the week ride or something, and I really just lobbed into town. Had no idea, did some Googling and had a couple of contacts, and I just rocked up. I think it was the 6 o'clock bunch or whatever it was, and I think the first few guys thought, "Who's this Wally with all the pro kit?" Until the third guy asked for a selfie, and then we're off.
Awesome. Look, thanks, mate. I'm going to stop recording now, but thanks for a great night. Yeah. Cheers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Talk to you soon.